Today we're going to talk about voice in scientific writing. Now, most of you are aware of voice simply because your supervisor has pointed out it is lacking in your writing. And when you ask the supervisor, okay, what do you mean by voice? He or she will say, your opinion is not coming through in your scientific writing. What do you feel about other points of view? And they also say there's no flow. So that's not terribly helpful. So you go to the internet, like I have done, and you look for definitions of voice. And there's not much, but this is what I've found, four that I've found. And I looked at the first one, and it says voice is a writer's perspective of the world. It incorporates elements of style and tone. Voice can be descriptive and poetic, or spare and pared back. It can be central feature of a narrative, or it can be neutral. And what is important is that it is always honest and consistent. That tells me nothing. It also doesn't tell me how I'm supposed to put voice into my dissertation writing. So then you go on to another one. How to add your academic voice, that sounds okay. Begin with a topic sentence. Now, I love topic sentences. If you looked at or listened to my talk on paragraphs, it will tell you that every paragraph has a topic sentence and supporting sentences and a concluding sentence. So I was happy to see this. Begin with a topic sentence that indicates the point of the paragraph. Explain your topic further by adding evidence in other sentences. And then you add your own analysis, conclusions, or ideas. It also doesn't tell me much about how I must put voice into my writing. Then 5 steps to find your writer's voice. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, write all the time. How, if I write all the time, will I develop a voice? And then finally, the most helpful I found came from the University of Melbourne. And they say most university writing tasks require you to draw on a range of academic sources to support your claims, arguments, and ideas. Now that's fine. That's what we learn. We always have to look at the literature. And then they go on to say, we use the term academic voice to talk about distinguishing between your thoughts and words and those of other authors. Okay. Now we understand what voice is, mainly from this last definition, but it still doesn't tell you how to go about it. So this is what I hope to convey in this talk. Where is voice most often required? In the literature review and in your discussion. Because in your methods and materials and results, you are telling your reader how you did the research and what your findings were. So your voice is there. But in the literature review, where you need to balance and compare different viewpoints in the literature on certain issues, and in your discussion where you place your research findings within the existing knowledge and you say how your findings differ or are completely new or don't actually add much more to the topic, that is where you have to display your own voice. Now let's take a look at this student. He or she, I don't know who it is. This is their dissertation for masters. And in this, he or she discusses post-combustion carbon capture routes. This is part of his review of the literature. This is what often prompts supervisors to say, I don't hear your voice. Because as you take a look, each one of these sentences is a statement, which ends in a reference. A statement ends in a reference. Another statement ends in a reference, and so on and so forth. And if you go through this, you get a general idea of what carbon capture routes as far as post-combustion is concerned. But this is just one statement after the next, and you're left with your own conclusions. For instance, and I just use this last sentence as an illustration. But throughout what has been written here, you can ask the questions and ask, for example, when it comes to adsorption is currently the most promising technology for carbon dioxide capture. Whoopsie. Page down. You can actually ask, but why? Why? And then, for instance, this technology may lay more burdens on power. But in what way? And this is puzzling. If you answer the question, why for this, and in what way for that, your voice is going to come through. You're going to give your opinion on why this is and in what way. So what voice is all about is finding your place in the research field and in your thesis. Now, I'm the first to admit that there are limited opportunities for voice in science texts because of the emphasis that we place on backing up your claims with factual evidence. It's not like in the humanities or like architecture or in the social sciences, where you've got far more scope to add your own voice and own opinions without your head being chopped off by an examiner. So what I like to say about voice is, I refer to it as your message to the world. What are you trying to say? And if your readers could remember only one message after reading the work, be it the full thesis or a subsection of the thesis, a section of your literature review, what are you trying to say about what you have read or what you have found? Davis very nicely says, with voice, it means you must discuss the literature that supports your argument and the literature that does not, but in such a way that your reader still knows where you stand and why. And a fascinating little piece, which I'm just going to chuck in, Nelson and Costello are linguists, and they did a whole study on the use of voice in different European countries. And they found that contrary to Britain and Germany and Holland and France, Finnish writers prefer to let the facts speak for themselves rather than putting in your voice. So Finnish writers were more inclined to write the way Hossi did when he spoke about carbon capture post-combustion, leaving a statement with a reference. But you see, what happens is the facts don't speak clearly. So you need to give interpretive help. Hossi might have had a certain idea in mind when he spoke about post-combustion carbon capture, but that might not be the way you interpret those sentences. So it needs a little bit of help, and the writer's voice is inferred from textual cues by those who read it. In other words, you use signposting to direct the reading and linking words. Linguistically, linking words are called meta-discourse markers. Now you can forget about this term at once, but I'm just putting it in because this is a bit of theory. But these markers are words or phrases that connect and organize text and express attitudes and ensure that the text flows from one idea to the next. So what you need to think about carefully is what idea you want to convey before selecting certain linking words. Now, what I do suggest you do is put your finger on the pause button and read through this list of linking words so you can get the idea of what the variation is within markers, which will help you get your voice. A frame marker. This is what the linguists have called it, are something like first, second, in conclusion, or finally. Transitions, where you transition from one idea to the next, are therefore moreover. Endophoric markers give you direction, as discussed below, as discussed in section 3.2. Evidentials are usually used in our writing, where we state according to Smith and Jones and give a reference. Clodegosses, that is to say, A booster is where you certainly agree with someone's writing, and a hedge you might possibly not agree, and so on and so forth. So let's just give some examples of textual clues indicating your voice. Firstly, showing how confident you are in your position. So let's say that you are really anti the death penalty. So when you look at the literature, you say, investigations to date definitely indicate a fundamental flaw in this argument. It certainly shows the need for more research on this topic of reintroducing the death penalty to decrease crime. You are definitely saying, hang on, we need some more evidence on this. But if you're a little bit frightened and you don't want to stick out your neck too far because the examiner might chop it off and fail you in your writing, you can say and hedge. The investigations to date may indicate a fundamental flaw in this argument. It could show a need for more research on this topic. So instead of using the boosters, which are definitely and certainly, you're saying may and could, which hedge a point. Indicating the strength of your claim. Your claim, you might feel that low-calorie diets have got nothing to do with human lifespan. You can say, furthermore, it appears that Field may have overlooked some key data when he raises the possibility that low-calorie diets extend human lifespan. This is called an engagement marker. How you engage with Field using those words that actually Field might be not all that correct, and you are indicating the strength of your claim, where you say diets have got nothing to do, whether they're low calorie or not, with extending human lifespan. And finally, what you think of another researcher's view. Peters is misguided when she inaccurately claims that PhD students can complete the degree in 12 months. Now, you certainly don't feel that a PhD student can complete the degree in 12 months. So you can't say Peters is a twit, but you certainly can say Peters is misguided. But it certainly gives the reader of what you have written your own idea of what you feel about Peters's work. So I hope that this explains a little bit more about voice. So in summary, voice is used to refer to your own views and to the ability to present other views as other voices. And I think it's nice to think about a debate where you and your chums are sitting around debating a point of view. So your voice is coming through, but you are also using your chums' voices and opinions to support and those ideas which shape your belief. But remember, this is now a written debate in words and not an oral debate. So you have to direct the reader through an understanding of various perspectives or citations or references as presented by the various researchers and clearly show your own point of view. And it's just by putting in words within your text, keywords which give your point of view. And remember, once again, it's most often used in summing up an issue in the literature review or the discussion. And finally, this is important, you don't have to have your own voice in every reference or citation. You use it in certain particular areas where it's going to have the most impact. So in these last two slides, I'm just going to show from a paper by Ched and Tuas, where they discuss metallic implant biomaterials. And I have chosen a section where they discuss corrosion of nickel-titanium alloys. Where there's voice, in red. So this is their actual text where they have used voice. And in this text on the right-hand side, I've removed the voice. So if you read this, this is much like the post-combustion carbon dioxide retrieval text, and this is where they've used voice. So let's just quickly go through that. As discussed in section 2.2, that is an endophoric marker, and they have used this as a signpost to tell you what that you have read previously. However, this is a connector term, and it connects two ideas, one after the other. Here is an evidential statement because it refers to where the knowledge you can find, the previous references, you're going to find it in table 38. So it's an evidential marker. And in general is a hedge because nickel titanium alloys has a better corrosion resistance than this compound in general. So what is important here? You don't need to know the linguistic theory and groupings behind voice. You just need to know what it is and how the use of linking words can work for you in your research writing. Now, this is the next section that I want to just quickly look at of the writings of Chen. That's an attitude marker. Nickel titanium is one of the most innovative concepts. That's your attitude. You think this is the best thing since sliced bread. And the next part of the sentence, its biocompatibility remains controversial, is an evidential statement because you're referring to the reference. Once again, an endophoric reference, you're referring your reader to another section within the text, another linking phrase. You're not repeating everything. If you want to read what I've said there, go to section 3.2.3. An evidential statement, there are only a small number of in vitro studies, which you can find in that table. And then in general, this is a hedge. You're not stating specifically how many studies there are, but in general. The cytocompatibility of nickel titanium is comparable with other alloys. And I'm not going to go through every single word that I've written in red here, but suffice to know, therefore, is a logical connection between two ideas. More recently is a sequential term because you're talking about more recent work. In general, that's another hedge. And it must be mentioned, you're shifting the topic. And I'm really not going to go through all of this, but put on your pause button and see how just adding these little words has made it, the whole text much more readable compared to this. And that's what voice is about. You're using small little words and linking texts just to explain how you feel and your attitudes towards other people who have written on the topic which you are doing research on. So to end, here's a very useful list of linking words in analyzing meta-discourse markers in your text, and you can find it at this website. And it gives you a whole string of words which might be appropriate in your writing. Because if you don't know what word you need to use, you can always go to that list. Finally, as I said, on YouTube, type in University of Melbourne, voice in academic writing. That is the link. And the YouTube is really very helpful. And there's always also a very good 2-page summary on voice. Thank you. I hope your supervisors will never have to complain about lack of voice in your writing from now on. Thank you.